What if I told you the biggest threat to your financial future isn't inflation, isn't a recession, and isn't your income? It's $500, not $50,000, not $500,000, just $500 a month. Because that harmless $500, the car upgrade, the subscriptions, the eating out, the minimum payments, doesn't just disappear. Over 30 years, it can quietly cost you $700,000 or more in lost wealth. And here's the part nobody talks about. The people who stay middle class and the people who build real wealth often earn similar incomes. The difference: one spends that $500, the other invests it. Today, I want to show you how a small, comfortable decision repeated every month can quietly decide whether you work for money your entire life, or money eventually works for you. Let me start with something that sounds almost too ordinary to matter. $500, not $5,000, not $50,000, just $500 a month. Most people don't react emotionally to that number. It doesn't feel dangerous. It doesn't feel irresponsible. In fact, it feels normal, manageable, even deserved. After all, you work hard, you earn your income. You should enjoy some of it, and that's exactly why it's so powerful. The $500 mistake doesn't look like a mistake. It doesn't arrive wearing a warning label. It shows up as a slightly nicer car, a payment stretched over 72 months, a few streaming services you barely use, dining out 3 or 4 extra times a month, a minimum credit card payment that quietly becomes permanent, a phone upgrade every year instead of every 3. Each decision feels small. Each one feels justified. And because it feels small, you don't examine it closely. But money has a personality. It compounds quietly, it grows silently, and it disappears the same way. Here's the illusion. $500 feels like a spending decision. In reality, it's an ownership decision. You're not just spending $500, you're deciding who owns that $500 every month for the next 30 years. You or someone else. Most people think in monthly terms. Wealthy people think in decades. If you earn $70,000 or $80,000 a year, $500 feels like a rounding error. It's less than 10% of your monthly income. It doesn't trigger alarm bells. It doesn't force sacrifice. It simply blends into the background of your life. And that's the danger. The biggest financial leaks aren't dramatic. They're comfortable. Comfort is expensive. Not because comfort is wrong, but because permanent comfort without intention compounds in the wrong direction. When someone says, it's only $500, what they're really saying is, I'm evaluating this decision in 30-day increments. But wealth is never built in 30-day increments. It's built in 30-year increments. Let's slow this down. Imagine 2 people. Same income, same starting point. One chooses to keep that extra $500 tied up in lifestyle upgrades. The other redirects it into assets. At the end of the first year, the difference feels tiny. At the end of 5 years, it's noticeable but not dramatic. At the end of 10 years, it begins to separate their lives. At the end of 30 years, it completely changes their financial identity. The first person feels stable. The second person feels secure. There's a difference. Stability means you can handle this month. Security means you own your future. The $500 illusion thrives because humans are wired for immediate reward. We feel the car upgrade today. We feel the restaurant meal tonight. We feel the convenience immediately. But we don't feel compounding. Compounding is silent in the early years. It doesn't give you dopamine. It gives you options later. And most people trade options for upgrades. This isn't about deprivation. It's about awareness. If you consciously decide that the $500 brings more value than its future potential, that's a rational choice. The problem is, most people never compare the two. They don't see it as a trade. They see it as a purchase. It's not a purchase, it's a fork in the road. The middle class often measures progress by visible signals: newer car, better apartment, upgraded lifestyle. The wealthy measure progress by invisible signals: rising net worth, growing investments, declining dependency on earned income. One looks impressive. The other builds independence. The $500 mistake usually begins right after progress. You get a raise. You move from $60,000 to $75,000 a year. You feel proud, and you should. But almost immediately, your lifestyle rises to meet your income. A better lease, higher monthly payments, more recurring costs. That extra income disappears before it ever has a chance to compound. Income goes up, net worth barely moves. It feels like growth, but it's sideways motion. And here's what makes this illusion so dangerous. It's socially reinforced. Your peers are doing the same thing. The nicer car is normal. The higher rent is normal. The upgraded lifestyle is expected. Nobody applauds restraint. Nobody celebrates the decision to invest instead of upgrade. But decades from now, the math will applaud you. You see, wealth rarely collapses because of one catastrophic decision. It erodes through 1,000 comfortable ones. $500 at a time. The person who says, it's just $500, is usually evaluating affordability. The person who builds wealth evaluates opportunity cost. Can I afford this? Or what does this cost me in freedom? That's a different question. If $500 a month compounds for 30 years, it doesn't stay $500. It transforms. It becomes years of financial independence. It becomes optional work instead of mandatory work. It becomes the ability to say no. It becomes margin in your life. And when you understand that, the number stops feeling small. The illusion disappears the moment you stretch the timeline. $500 isn't dangerous because it's large. It's dangerous because it's invisible. It hides in routine. It disguises itself as normal. It slips into your budget quietly and stays there for decades. And the longer it stays, the more expensive it becomes. Small numbers repeated consistently become life-changing numbers. That's the illusion. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now let's talk about the part that makes people uncomfortable. The math. Not complicated math. Not Wall Street math. Just patient math. When I mention that $500 a month can quietly turn into $700,000 or more over 30 years, some people assume there must be a trick. There isn't. The only ingredient is time. If you invest $500 a month and earn an average annual return of 8% to 10%, which historically has been achievable through broad ownership of productive businesses, the result after 3 decades is $180,000, which is what you physically contributed. It's several multiples of that. It grows to a number that begins to change your options in life. And that difference, the gap between what you put in and what you end up with, is opportunity cost in action. Opportunity cost is the most expensive concept most people never calculate. When you spend $500, you think you're losing $500. In reality, you're losing what that $500 could have become if given time and discipline. And time is the one asset you can't replenish. Compounding is not dramatic at the beginning. In the early years, it feels almost disappointing. You invest faithfully, and the balance inches upward. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't feel transformative. That's why most people quit too early. But compounding is like rolling a snowball down a hill. In the first few feet, it barely grows. Then gradually, it begins to pick up size and speed. By the time it reaches the bottom, the growth appears explosive, even though the process was steady all along. The problem is that most people stand at the top of the hill and decide the snowball isn't worth pushing. Let's break this down simply. If you invest $500 a month at 8% annually, after 10 years you don't have a fortune. You have a solid start. After 20 years, you begin to see meaningful growth. After 30 years, the numbers become serious. The majority of the growth happens in the final stretch. That's the part nobody talks about. We live in a culture that celebrates fast money, quick flips, overnight success, but durable wealth almost always follows a different pattern. Slow, steady, and compounding. The irony is that the first $100,000 feels almost impossible. It requires consistency without visible reward. The second $100,000 comes faster. The third, faster still. Eventually, your investments begin earning more than your contributions. Your money starts working harder than you do. And that's when the equation changes. Most people focus on income. They negotiate salary, chase promotions, look for side hustles. There's nothing wrong with earning more, but income alone rarely creates lasting wealth. Ownership does. When you invest that $500, you're not saving it. You're converting it into ownership of productive assets. Businesses that sell products, provide services, generate profits. Over time, those profits compound. Your share compounds. And the growth accelerates. But when you spend that same $500 on something depreciating, you not only lose the principal, you lose the future earnings attached to it. And that's where the $700,000 figure becomes real. You're not choosing between $500 and nothing. You're choosing between $500 today and a meaningful sum in the future. And most people consistently choose today. There's another element here that's important. Consistency matters more than brilliance. You don't need to predict the next breakthrough company. You don't need perfect timing. What you need is the discipline to keep investing, especially when markets feel uncertain, because compounding doesn't care about headlines. It cares about duration. If you invest $500 one month and skip the next 3, you interrupt the snowball. If you panic during a downturn and pull out, you interrupt the snowball. The math only works if time remains uninterrupted, and time rewards patience disproportionately. In the first decade, your contributions make up most of the balance. In the third decade, growth makes up most of the balance. That means the real power of compounding shows up late in the journey, which is precisely when most people wish they had started earlier. That's why the phrase, "it's just $500" is so misleading. It reduces a long-term equation into a short-term feeling. Let's imagine 2 futures. In one, you consistently redirect that $500 into investments for 30 years. In the other, you consistently redirect it into consumption. At the end of those 30 years, the difference isn't marginal. It's transformative. One future owns assets. The other owns memories of expenses. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life. But the key is understanding trade-offs. Every dollar has a job. When you give it to consumption, its job ends. When you give it to investment, its job multiplies. And here's the subtle truth. Compounding doesn't just grow money, it grows confidence. Watching your investments expand year after year changes how you see risk, opportunity, and time. You begin thinking in decades. You begin valuing patience. You begin prioritizing ownership. That mindset shift alone can alter your financial trajectory. Most people never calculate what their habits cost over 30 years. They calculate what they cost this month. But wealth is the result of long-term arithmetic, not monthly emotion. The math is not magical. It's mechanical. $500. Consistently invested. Left alone. Reinvested returns. 30 years? That's it. No secret formula. No insider advantage. Just discipline applied over time. And when you truly understand that $500 a month can quietly grow into $700,000 or more, it stops feeling like spare change. It starts feeling like leverage. There's a moment in most careers that feels like progress. You move from earning $50,000 a year to $65,000. Then maybe to $80,000. Perhaps you cross into six figures. Each step feels like validation. Your skills improved, your value increased. You did what you were supposed to do. And yet, for many people, something surprising happens during this climb. Their stress doesn't disappear. Their savings don't accelerate dramatically. Their financial freedom doesn't feel closer. In some cases, it feels just as far away as it did when they earned much less. That's because income growth and wealth growth are not the same thing. There is a quiet trap that tends to activate somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. I call it the lifestyle expansion reflex. It's almost automatic. Income resize and spending resize right alongside it, sometimes faster. You don't feel reckless, you feel upgraded. You move to a nicer apartment because you can now afford it. You replace a reliable car with a newer one, better features, higher payment. You upgrade vacations, you add subscriptions. You start saying yes more often because the numbers in your bank account look healthier. Nothing seems extreme. Each decision appears reasonable in isolation, but collectively, they lock in permanence. That's the key word most people miss. Permanence. A raise is temporary unless converted into assets, but a higher rent payment is permanent. A car payment stretches 5, 6, sometimes 7 years. Subscriptions renew automatically. Insurance costs increase with lifestyle. Dining habits become routines. Before long, the extra $1,500 you earned monthly has already been assigned new obligations, and the opportunity to redirect $500 toward compounding quietly disappears. What makes this trap powerful is that it feels like success. It looks like success. From the outside, you appear to be advancing. And in many ways, you are. But wealth isn't measured by visible upgrades. It's measured by invisible ownership. The middle-income years are financially decisive. They are the years when earning power is strong, time is still on your side, and compounding can still do heavy lifting. But they are also the years when lifestyle pressure is highest. Social expectations, family needs, comparisons with peers. You attend gatherings, and you see others upgrading. You scroll through photos of new homes, new cars, international trips. It subtly adjusts your baseline. What once felt luxurious begins to feel normal. What once felt optional begins to feel standard. And that's how a $500 monthly difference becomes permanent. Most people don't experience a financial collapse because of a single dramatic event. They experience a slow narrowing of margin. The gap between income and expenses shrinks until it disappears. At that point, even a solid income feels tight. I've seen individuals earning $90,000 feel financially constrained. Because their lifestyle rose to $89,000, I've also seen individuals earning $60,000, steadily building wealth because they preserved margin. Margin is freedom. Without margin, every unexpected expense becomes stressful. Every downturn becomes frightening. Every opportunity requires borrowing or sacrifice. With margin, you can absorb shocks. You can invest during downturns. You can think long-term. The lifestyle trap eliminates margin quietly. And it rarely feels like a trap in the moment. It feels like reward. Here's the irony. The period right after a raise is the most powerful moment to change your financial trajectory. When your income increases, you have a choice. You can upgrade your lifestyle immediately, or you can lock in a higher investment rate first and upgrade later, if at all. That first decision compounds. If your income rises by $1,000 per month and you immediately spend $800 of it, you've locked in a higher baseline. But if you invest $500 first and allow yourself to enjoy $500, you've converted progress into ownership. Over a 20 or 30-year career, that pattern makes an extraordinary difference. The people who quietly build wealth often look surprisingly ordinary. They don't inflate dramatically with each raise. They let their net worth rise faster than their lifestyle. They allow compounding to absorb the bulk of each income increase. The people who feel perpetually stretched often do the opposite. Lifestyle leads, investing follows. If anything remains, there's another subtle cost to lifestyle inflation. It increases your required income. Once your expenses rise, your job becomes less optional. You must maintain that level of earnings to support your obligations. You'll lose flexibility, and flexibility is one of the most valuable forms of wealth. Imagine two individuals earning $85,000. One has fixed expenses of $60,000. The other has fixed expenses of $80,000. Both earn the same salary, but one has room to maneuver. The other is dependent on continuity. In uncertain economic times, that difference becomes enormous. The lifestyle trap after $50,000 to $80,000 isn't about greed. It's about unconscious drift. No one wakes up intending to eliminate their financial margin. It happens gradually. A slightly nicer choice here, a recurring cost there, a decision justified by, I work hard. And you do work hard. But the goal isn't to look wealthier. The goal is to become wealthier. When income rises, you're standing at a fork in the road. One path leads to a more impressive present, the other leads to a more independent future. Both feel rewarding in different ways, but only one compounds in your favor. The most powerful financial habit is simple. When income increases, raise your investment rate before you raise your lifestyle. If you do that consistently, your wealth will accelerate even if your income grows modestly. If you ignore it, even a strong income may never translate into security. Most people believe their breakthrough will come from earning more. In reality, it often comes from holding the line. When they finally do, the trap is comfortable. It's socially accepted. It's rarely questioned. But over decades, it quietly decides who owns assets and who owns obligations. And once lifestyle expands beyond intention, it becomes very difficult to reverse. Progress without discipline becomes pressure. So if the illusion is real, and the math is real, and the lifestyle trap is real, then the obvious question becomes, what do you actually do about it? The answer isn't dramatic. It isn't complex. It doesn't require predicting markets or finding the next breakthrough company. It requires a shift in order. Most people upgrade their lifestyle first and invest what's left. Wealthy people tend to reverse that order. They invest first and upgrade later. That single adjustment changes everything. When money hits your account, it represents potential energy. Left alone, it will drift toward consumption. That's the default setting. Bills arrive. Temptations appear. Opportunities to spend are endless. If you rely on discipline alone each month, you're fighting gravity. So instead of fighting gravity, you design around it. You automate your investing before you see the money. You decide in advance that a certain percentage, perhaps that $500, will be redirected into assets immediately, not after expenses, not after upgrades. First, when you do that, you remove emotion from the equation. Emotion is expansive. It justifies comfort. It rationalizes upgrades. It whispers, you deserve this. And often, you do. But deserving something and affording its long-term cost are two different things. Automation protects you from your own short-term impulses. If you invest first, something interesting happens. Your lifestyle adapts to what remains. Humans are remarkably adaptable. If you bring home $5,000 and immediately invest $500, but if you spend first and attempt to invest what's left, you'll almost always find that nothing is left consistently. This is not about restriction, it's about priority. When you pay yourself first, not in the sense of moving money into a savings account, but in the sense of buying ownership in productive assets, you begin building a machine that works independently of your daily effort. And over time, that machine grows. There's another principle here that's easy to overlook. Delay upgrades, not life. If your car works perfectly well, keeping it a few extra years may not feel exciting. It doesn't produce applause, but that delay might represent tens of thousands of dollars redirected into compounding. If your apartment is comfortable and safe, resisting the urge to upgrade simply because income increased can accelerate your timeline toward freedom by years. Most lifestyle upgrades provide short bursts of satisfaction. Compounding provides expanding optionality. Optionality is underrated. When your investments grow large enough, you gain choices. You can change careers without panic. You can take calculated risks. You can step back temporarily. You can say no to situations that compromise your values. That flexibility often matters more than the possessions you postponed. Think about the $500 again. If you redirect it consistently into ownership, broad, productive, diversified ownership, you're building a future version of yourself that depends less on monthly paychecks. You're building a buffer against uncertainty. You're building resilience. And resilience is wealth. The shift is subtle but powerful. Instead of asking, what can I upgrade now? You begin asking, how can I strengthen my position? Instead of viewing raises as spending opportunities, you view them as acceleration tools. When income rises, increase your automatic investment amount immediately. Lock it in before you adjust anything else. That way, your net worth rises faster than your visible lifestyle. Over time, something remarkable happens. The pressure decreases, because as your investments grow, they begin producing returns to supplement your effort. Eventually, those returns may exceed your contributions. And one day, if you're patient enough, they may exceed your expenses. That's when work becomes optional rather than mandatory. But that outcome is the result of years of small, consistent decisions. You don't need perfection. You don't need to eliminate every indulgence. What you need is a clear rule. Invest first, adjust later. If you do that, the invisible $500 transforms from a leak into leverage. And leverage works quietly. In the early years, you won't feel dramatic change. Your lifestyle might look modest compared to others upgrading more aggressively. You might even question whether the restraint is worth it. But remember, compounding hides its strength until later. By the time others feel trapped by obligations they locked in years ago, you may find yourself with increasing flexibility. There's no applause for delayed gratification in the short term, but there is freedom in the long term. And freedom is the ultimate financial return. The simple shift, automate investing, delay upgrades, let net worth rise faster than lifestyle, flips the outcome entirely. It turns the $500 from a silent drain into a silent engine. It's not about being extreme, it's about being intentional. When you control the order of your money, you control its direction. And when you control its direction long enough, you control your future. If you mastered this one shift, you mastered the outcome. If this message made you rethink even one $500 decision in your life, don't let it end as motivation, turn it into action. Tonight, look at your last 30 days of spending. Find one recurring expense that's quietly stealing your future. Redirect it, automate it, make your next paycheck the turning point. Because financial freedom doesn't begin with a raise. It begins with a decision. If you're serious about building wealth instead of just looking successful, subscribe and commit to learning how money really works. Not the flashy version, but the compounding version. And remember, the difference between broke and wealthy is often just $500, repeated long enough.